My mother labeled my daughter unattractive at her first birthday celebration, so I severed all contact and erased her from every picture. Now she's lamenting on social media, casting herself as the victim. My daughter Lily's first birthday was supposed to be gentle and fleeting, like a soft summer breeze or the lingering scent of frosting on your hands after the final bite of cake. It was a modest gathering in our backyard, with mismatched chairs sinking into the grass, paper plates buckling under grocery store cupcakes, and children squealing without purpose. It wasn't the kind of day you'd pen poetry about, but one you'd share in a few blurry snapshots online with a caption like, "Can't believe she's won." Then let it fade. I didn't plan to etch it into memory, not the way it's burned into me now. Lily wore a pale pink onesie with a tiny ladybug embroidered on the chest, losing one shoe within the first half hour. My husband Tom stood beside me, clumsily cradling her as we sang happy birthday. Too slow, too loud. My sister Clara quipped about our family's lack of musical talent, and everyone chuckled a bit too heartily, as we always do, overcorrecting for the moment. The air carried the scent of plastic spoons, mosquito repellent, and slightly burned hot dogs. It should have been a perfect day. Then my mother showed up late, as she always does. She arrived with a gift far too grand for the occasion, wrapped in shimmering silver paper, as if we were commemorating a regal event rather than a toddler smudging icing into her own cheek. Margaret never grasped the art of subtlety. She had a knack for entering a space and shifting its atmosphere. She pecked Lily's forehead without really seeing her, then turned to me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You look worn out," she said softly, just loud enough for Clara to overhear. "Still holding on to that baby weight, aren't you?" I forced a laugh, a reflex honed over years of dodging her barbs. Tom tried to steer her attention, offering a hot dog or a drink, but she brushed him off like a pesky insect. Her eyes scanned the party as if she were sizing up a war zone. The moment came as we coaxed Lily to blow out her single candle. Everyone huddled around the small table, phones raised, voices blending in forced excitement. I leaned in, smiling, guiding Lily's tiny hand toward the flame. Then my mother bent close, her breath grazing my ear, and whispered, "She's going to grow up plain, like you." I didn't turn to face her. I didn't even flinch. I stood frozen, mid-smile, one hand on Lily's wrist, the other clutching my phone like it might shatter. The candle wavered. Lily made a puffing noise, more like a cough, and the flame vanished. The crowd cheered. The moment passed. But I didn't. Later that night, after Lily was asleep and the last traces of frosting were scrubbed from the patio, I sat on the couch, scrolling through photos, searching for something I couldn't name. Not at first. Then I found it. It was grainy, overexposed. My face tilted slightly, my lips caught in that awkward half-smile you wear when you're about to laugh, but something feels wrong. My mother lingered in the corner of the frame, just behind my shoulder. Her face hovered near mine, her mouth twisted like a blade, her eyes sharp. She looked like a stranger. No one else in the photo noticed her. They were all focused on Lily. But I saw her. I saw it. I stared at the image too long. Tom came in from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a dishcloth. "Going through the pictures?" he asked. "Yeah," I replied, my eyes fixed. "That one's sweet," he said, pointing to a shot of Lily with icing in her curls. But I didn't show him the other one. I didn't say a word. I just saved it quietly in a folder labeled proof, all caps. The thing about mothers like mine is they make you question whether your memories belong to you or them. Margaret had a way of warping reality, leaving me unsure if I was overreacting or simply unhealed. But this time I had evidence. I had a snapshot of the exact moment my mind said, "Enough." That was the first photo I edited her out of. I opened an app, the kind teens use to airbrush their faces, and started small. I cropped her out. I erased her shadow. Then I moved to group shots, backyard scenes. The one where she's perched by the barbecue, the one where she's holding Lily but not really holding her, her arms rigid like she's touching something sharp. Delete. Crop. Paint over. It became compulsive, like disinfecting a cut you didn't know was still open. The next day I printed 10 of the best photos and hung them in Lily's room. Every one of them, bright, joyful, Margaret-free. Clara texted a few days later, "Hey, where's Mom in the picture with Lily and the cake? Did it not turn out?" I replied, "Not sure," which was technically true. That night I dreamed of a family portrait, but every time I tried to smile, my mother leaned in, whispering something that made my face crumple like damp tissue. I woke with a fire in my chest. I wasn't going to let Lily grow up hearing the same venom I did. I wasn't waiting for the next party, the next photo, the next whispered jab disguised as honesty. I wasn't going to let my mother etch herself into my daughter's story the way she did mine, with a sharp tongue and a crooked grin. If she couldn't love Lily properly, she wouldn't love her at all. I grabbed my phone and started sifting through every album, every memory, every digital trace of my mother, and I began erasing her, picture by picture, moment by moment, memory by memory, because vengeance doesn't always need to be loud. Sometimes it's just a quiet delete. That's where it began. There's a difference between forgetting someone and deciding they don't deserve to be remembered. I didn't fully grasp it until I was in the laundry room, folding mismatched baby socks, recalling how my mother called me stocky when I was 12. Not cruelly, not in a way others would notice, but with a slight lilt, like she was pointing out a flaw she expected to worsen. And she wasn't wrong. It did worsen. Not my say about how my mother used to call me plain by 16. Sometimes casually, sometimes mid-conversation, as if she were doing me a favor by saying it aloud before anyone else could. I remember brushing my hair before prom, holding the curling iron too long until it scorched, hearing her through the cracked door say, "She's just unremarkable. Maybe it's the eyes." As if I weren't right there, as if I weren't trying to erase myself faster than she could. At 22, I told her I wanted to move cross-country, start fresh, maybe go to grad school. She didn't blink. "You were probably a mistake anyway," she said, like she was reading off a shopping list. I didn't cry, I just nodded. Because what do you do when someone hands you a truth like that? You either let it sink into your bones or spit it out before it sticks. I let it settle, for years. But now, I have Lily. And something about motherhood makes you want to either shield your child from the world or show it to her, piece by painful piece. I chose to shield her because I know how deep the first cut can be. And I'd rather she stay innocent than bleed quietly before she learns to speak. So I went beyond photos. I dug through old flash drives, cloud backups, and printed albums buried in drawers I hadn't opened in years. Margaret at my wedding, her lips tight, smirking like she was watching a disaster unfold in slow motion. I opened the image in an editor and painted her out carefully. It took 10 minutes. 10 minutes to erase decades of her standing too close, holding me like she was allergic to affection. Gone. I looked at the photo afterward, the space she'd occupied now filled with light and air. It looked better without her. Then I moved on. Christmas 3 years ago, when she told me too much salt would make Lily cross-eyed. She said it with a chuckle, fork halfway to her mouth. I nodded, too drained to argue. She's gone from that photo now, replaced by the tree's glow and Clara's toddler hurling a plastic ornament at the cat. I erased her from 24 photos. Odd, since we only had 13 guests at the party. But she always found a way to insert herself, as if no moment was complete without her presence. Clara noticed first. She texted 2 days after I shared the edited album online. "Where's Mom in these? Did she leave early?" I typed and deleted my reply 3 times before settling on, "She must have stepped out for those." Not a lie, technically, but maybe spiritually. Tom noticed next. He didn't say anything at first, just gave me that slow, careful look he reserves for when he's debating whether to hug me or suggest counseling. Over dinner, he finally asked, "You sure this is the path you want to take?" I looked at Lily, her cheeks stuffed with mashed peas, her face radiating love and innocence, and said, "I'm already halfway down it." What I didn't say was this: if I had a time machine, I wouldn't stop myself from doing this. I'd go back further and erase Margaret from every birthday, every recital, every moment I stood in front of a mirror hating what I saw because she'd handed me the words to hate it. Late that night, my phone lit up with a message. One line, no greeting. "Why am I blocked from Lily's baby album?" I stared until the screen dimmed. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. She knew why. She just didn't want to admit it. And part of me waited, wondering if she'd text again, call, or show up pretending nothing happened, acting like I was the dramatic one, like I'd always misheard her, like her words were never knives, just harmless observations. But she didn't follow up. She didn't push, because deep in her cold heart, she knew I wasn't backing down this time. This time I was cutting, and this time she wasn't coming back. There's a kind of revenge that doesn't involve shattered glass or raised voices, no bruises, torn clothes, or skid marks in the driveway. It creeps in slowly, like poison in a teacup, tasting almost sweet before it sickens. And when done right, no one can trace it back to you. That's how I started handling my mother, like a silent infection I finally treated after years of pretending I wasn't ill. It began with the photos, but it didn't stop there. Erasing her face was just the start. Beneath that, her influence tainted everything she touched, and I wasn't done rooting it out. First, I removed Stuart. Then moved to the family calendar. Tom and I used to track birthdays, appointments, preschool events, and holidays. I removed her email from the invite list, deleted every event she'd been part of, wiped away the recurring reminders of her existence. Then I changed the location of Lily's daycare picnic, sharing the new details only with those I trusted not to pass it on. When Clara asked why the address changed, I said there were plumbing issues. That satisfied her. No one questions logistics when it comes to kids. Everyone assumes the mess is someone else's. Tom watched me warily, like a man eyeing a woman who started carrying a blade, not sure if she's protecting herself or planning something worse. One night, as Lily slept and I sat on the couch editing another old photo, he asked, "Are you going to tell her?" I didn't look up from my screen. "Tell who what?" He gave me that tired look, the one that said, "Don't play dumb, Emma. Not with me." So I closed my laptop and met his eyes. "Are you going to tell your mother why you're cutting her out of everything?" I didn't answer right away. There was too much to say and none of it came out the way I needed it to. So I just shook my head. "She doesn't deserve closure," I said finally. "She never gave me any." And that was the truest thing I'd said in months. I didn't get closure when she told me I was prettier before my braces, at 10, standing in a new blue dress, grinning because it wasn't a stretched-out hand-me-down. She looked at me and said, "You were cuter before those teeth." Like I was some broken grown-up she didn't want anymore. I didn't get closure when she mocked my tears at my own graduation, saying no man would marry someone so emotional. And I didn't get closure when she said Lily would grow up plain like me. So number. She wasn't getting a polite phone call. She wasn't getting a formal notice. She'd figure it out the way the world does, through absence. But absence has its own weight. It fills a room like fog. Subtle at first, then choking when you realize you've waited too long to escape. She must have felt it because a week after I cut her from the picnic, she appeared at my door. It was late Thursday afternoon, the light fading, the scent of sun-warmed earth rising from the neglected flower beds. Lily was stacking toy blocks on the floor, babbling in that sweet, nonsensical way toddlers do before words form. Then the doorbell rang. I knew who it was before I opened it. Margaret stood there, clutching a fancy gift bag from some upscale boutique, all ribbons and shine, no wrapping paper. She wore that stiff half-smile she used when she wanted to seem warm but lacked the effort. And I'll give her this. She didn't start with a question, an apology, or a quip. She just said, "Thought I'd stop by." For Lily. I stayed in the doorway, not stepping aside. I wasn't making it easy. Inside, Lily stopped babbling. She glanced up, then at the door, then back down, like something in her little mind felt off. Eventually, I let Margaret in, more out of grim curiosity than kindness. She approached Lily cautiously, crouching, holding out the bag like a wicked fairy offering curses disguised as treats. But Lily didn't move toward her, didn't even smile. She stared at Margaret for a long moment, then turned back to her blocks, picking up a red one, like the moment had slipped away. I saw my mother's face flicker, her lips dipping just enough for me to notice, knowing every crack in her facade. She waited for Lily to reach out, for that instinctive toddler need to connect with a familiar grown-up. It never came. In that moment, something sharp and final clicked into place, because even babies sense when love isn't real. I took the gift bag from her hands without a word, set it on the table without looking inside, and said the only thing that needed saying. "I think you should go." She didn't argue, didn't shout. She nodded once and left. Her heels clicked on the hardwood as she walked out, like she had somewhere better to be. But she didn't. Not anymore, because I wasn't burning the house down with her in it. I was just making sure she'd never get a key again. I always thought if anyone would back me up, really step up and say, "Yeah, she did that." I saw it too. She said those things, it'd be my sister. Clara grew up in the same suffocating house, under the same heavy rules and cold silences that lingered too long. She was there when our mother called me melodramatic for crying at Dad's funeral, then pulled her into the kitchen to whisper, "Thank God it wasn't you, darling, I couldn't bear that." She was there when Margaret critiqued my looks before turning to Clara with a smile so warm you'd think it came from someone else's mouth. In our 20s, we'd laugh about it, sprawled on my apartment floor with cheap wine and takeout, calling her the vulture when we felt bold. But we never dug deeper. We never asked why Clara got the gold while I got the grit. So when she texted, "Can we talk?" I knew what was coming. The guilt, the confusion. Maybe you're taking this too far. I was ready, but it still knotted my stomach. The same knot I got as a kid when Margaret called my name from another room, her tone making me wonder if I'd done something wrong when I hadn't. Clara showed up with coffee in hand, her face tight like she was fighting a frown and losing. She didn't sit right away, lingering by the kitchen counter, unsure if she wanted to stay long. I let her speak first, knowing how this worked. She needed to feel in control of the story. "You've been editing her out of everything," she said finally, her words slow and careful, hoping softness would hide the judgment. I nodded, leaning against the wall. "Yeah, I have." She paused, then said, "Isn't that a bit extreme?" That's when I decided to show her the photo. I'd kept it, printed it, despite telling myself I was done with Margaret. But this wasn't for her. It was for proof. I slid it across the table to Clara. The same picture from Lily's birthday, everyone clapping, celebrating, and Margaret leaning into my ear, her mouth twisted like she was spitting out a bitter fact. "She said Lily would grow up plain," I told Clara flatly. "Like me?" Clara stared at the photo, silent for too long. Her eyes traced the edges, the faces, the frozen moment of my half-smile, my body tensing. I waited for her to deny it, to deflect. "You must have misheard." But it didn't come. Not immediately. Instead, she said, almost too quietly, "I thought you looked happy in this one." I shook my head, weary. "Do you really think I was?" She didn't answer. That silence cracked something in her. Not enough to rebuild trust, but enough to make her wonder if maybe I wasn't inventing it. That maybe, all those years I was called the fragile one, the overly emotional one, I was just the one speaking the truth too soon for anyone to believe. Then, the bomb hit. That night, Margaret posted on Facebook. Not a private message, not a call. A public post for all her friends, neighbors, old church ladies, former co-workers, and distant high school acquaintances to see. "My daughter has poisoned my bond with my granddaughter. Pray for me in this painful time. Some people don't know what family means until it's gone." It was shared 17 times in the first hour. Comments poured in. Hugs, prayers, stories of other children turning cold or ungrateful. Some mentioned forgiveness. One woman wrote, "You're still her mother. Don't give up yet." I read it all in stunned silence, sitting in my dark kitchen, the phone's glow burning my eyes. My hands trembled with rage, shame, and something I couldn't name. Maybe sorrow, for the part of me that still hoped she'd say, "I was wrong. You didn't deserve that." But she wouldn't. Instead, she went public. I thought about letting the post fester in her martyrdom, staying quiet. But then I realized silence was what had chained me for so long. She thrived in silence, saying nothing to cruel remarks, pretending uncomfortable memories didn't exist, expecting me to swallow every slight like a sacrament. So I broke the silence with one comment. Just one. "Pray for the woman in that photo," I wrote on her post. "She doesn't exist anymore." By morning, there were over 200 comments. Some backed her, some sided with me. But the ones that cut deepest asked, what really happened? For once, she didn't own the narrative. Something shifted in that space of doubt, in the gap of carefully crafted lies. Because people didn't need to know everything. Maybe it was enough that she wasn't the only one speaking anymore. After the final showdown, there's a strange quiet. When the shouting stops, the social media storm settles, and the door you shut stops rattling. Not because they stopped pushing, but because they gave up. That was the silence I woke to on Thursday morning. Coffee in one hand, Lily toddling across the living room carpet in her footy pajamas, chewing on something imaginary, her tiny fingers tapping blocks that no longer glowed like they used to. The world felt quieter. Not peaceful, but hollowed out in a way I'd never known. Like a house gutted, its floors still echoing what once lived there. I'd been thinking about the baby book for months, ever since Margaret showed up with that gift bag and Lily pulled away, her little body sensing the poison. Something locked into place that day, something vital and final. It wasn't just about erasing my mother from the present, it was about keeping her shadow from crossing into Lily's memories, because children remember more than we think. They recall the edge in a voice, the tension in their mother's face, the way hands tighten when the phone rings. I remembered everything. And I wasn't letting Lily inherit that legacy of hurt, so I started writing by hand, something sacred about the act, more than typing. I made my own baby book with soft-colored pages and gentle prompts. Navy leather, heavy paper, bound tight. I wrote the story of Lily's birth, her tiny fingers wrapping around my thumb like she knew me. Her first giggle at the dog's tail, how she loved applesauce more than peas. I wrote about Tom assembling her crib at midnight, grumbling softly, and how we debated whether to use white noise for her sleep. But I didn't write about Margaret, not once. Not a footnote, not a side character, not a name scribbled next to guests or gifts. She was a phantom, and phantoms don't belong in baby books. Each page was a small rebellion, each inked line a way of saying, You don't live here anymore. Tom watched me work in silence. No questions, no suggestions. One night he came over, took the finished book from my hands, and set it gently on the shelf above Lily's changing table, like it was sacred. And maybe it was. The next morning, Lily waddled to that shelf, pointing with one chubby finger. She looked at me, eyes wide and bright, and said her first real sentence. Not a word, a sentence. Nana's gone. I didn't cry. I didn't waver. I just smiled, knelt to her level, and said, "Yeah, baby, she is." It wasn't harsh. It wasn't bitter. It was true. The simplest kind. The kind that doesn't need a story to back it up, because Margaret hadn't just left our lives. I'd made sure she couldn't come back. As a whisper. As a warped memory. As a ghost pretending to be kin. I didn't destroy my mother. I just erased her existence. For a while, that was enough. The quiet settled around us like dust on a ledge. Tom and I slept better. Clara kept her distance, unsure whether to lean into the silence or fight it. I didn't push her either way. Margaret's absence gave me room to breathe, and I wasn't about to fill it with old regrets or half-mended ties. But 6 months later, a letter came. No return address, no postmark I recognized. Just my name, in handwriting I hadn't seen since she signed my permission slips with a long, impatient flourish. I thought about burning it, held it over the sink, wondering if it was heavy enough to hold more than paper. But I opened it. Inside was a photo. Me at 13. No makeup, crooked braces, a baggy t-shirt, hair in a messy ponytail. I was smiling. Not a forced smile, but a real shy, hopeful one. Like the person behind the camera cared about me. On the back, she'd written one line. "You were never plain. I just didn't know how to love beautiful things." No apology, no explanation. Just one sentence. A confession wrapped in cowardice. The truth. Too late to matter. Too early to forgive. I stared at the photo for a long time. Not because I missed her, not because I thought she'd changed, but because I wanted to remember that girl. To remember that despite everything, I still believed I was worth capturing, worth seeing. I didn't write back. I didn't call. I didn't post a reply. But I didn't throw the photo away either. I kept it. Not for her. For me. To remember what I survived.